Hello and welcome back to another episode of Run Level 0. Today we're going to do a review of the Korora Project, Korora Linux 19.1 with the Mate desktop. That's right, Mate. Traditionally, Korora has only offered GNOME 3 or KDE, but last week they released Mate and Cinnamon desktops. I was feeling a little nostalgic, so I thought I'd go with the Mate. Now, for those of you that are not used to Korora or are not familiar with it, Korora is a respin of Fedora Linux. Fedora Linux being one of the major large distributions. Fedora is the open source version or the open source derivative of Red Hat Linux, which is an enterprise Linux distribution. Now, Fedora is typically not recommended for production environments because it can be a bit buggy. I'm not sure, but I think they do a lot of their testing for Red Hat in Fedora before it's put into the Enterprise Edition. The relationship between Korora and Fedora, whereas Fedora is dedicated to an open source philosophy and is very hard to obtain proprietary drivers and install non-free software, Korora has added a lot of those repositories, and they've made it a bit easier to get a hold of that non-free stuff. You can kind of look at it like Linux Mint is a more user-friendly, prepared out-of-the-box version of Ubuntu. So if you look at that relationship when you're thinking about Korora, Korora is kind of the Linux Mint for Fedora. So it's a similar relationship. Korora has made Fedora more ready to go for the daily use out of the box. And it's been very stable for me. I've run it for the last 3.5 days installed on my laptop, and I haven't experienced a single crash. So compared to my experiences with Fedora, Korora has been much more stable. It's been a very enjoyable distro to play with. So let's take a look at what we have here. Now, if you're new to Linux, this desktop environment may seem a little foreign to you. If you're a seasoned Linux user, this desktop is like a sweet homecoming. This is the Mate desktop environment. And Mate is a continuation of the GNOME 2 desktop, which was discontinued by GNOME a few years ago now. Mate picked up the source code. They've continued development. They've done a really good job with it. So this provides you, if you want to have a classic Linux experience, this is where you want to look. This is the classic paradigm of Linux experiences right here. So let's take a look at the desktop. On the far, you have one bar across the top. You have another on the bottom. The top bar on the far right, you have your calendar and clock, battery monitor, network monitor, and your volume control, as well as your notification area. On the right side, you have your application menu, which is in classic GNOME 2 style, subcategorized. One of the things that really struck me about this installation, before we get into the menus, is they have Compass already configured and ready to go. They have a menu entry. You can start Compass with the Mate window manager or with the GTK window manager. We're going to look at this in just a minute in a bit further detail. But you also get a disk manager, virtual keyboard. Of course, you have Emerald Decorator. So if you start Compass with GTK, and you want to switch to Emerald as your window decorator, you can just click here, it'll switch you over. And on the other side of that, if you started it with Emerald and you want to switch to GTK, simply click here, it'll switch you right over. Now, neither one of these are running at startup. Compass is not. It's just a standard desktop with the GTK window manager. But it would be pretty easy just to add a line in your startup applications for this. So if you wanted to get it running on startup, that wouldn't be too difficult. You have an archive manager. You have a G-Note. You have a calculator. There is a client here for OwnCloud, so if you have an OwnCloud account, you can sync it right here. Pluma is your text editor. You can take a screenshot, and XFBurn is the CD burner. Under graphics, you have a PDF viewer, a image viewer, Eye of Mate. The GIMP is installed, as well as Inkscape, so that for vector graphics, that's nice to see. You have a link to LibreOffice Draw. Raw Therapy is a photo developer, or photo editor. Shotwell, photo organizer, as well as Simple Scan for your scanning needs. Under Internet, Claus is the email client. You get the Deluge BitTorrent client, as well as, I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced, Akiga software phone. So if you have an Akiga account or an account on another VoIP provider, you can get that set up and running here right from your computer. You don't see this often. FileZilla is installed. Firefox is the default installed web browser. You have GNOME RDP. Google Chrome is installed. Google Chrome is not installed, rather. I installed Google Chrome and Kdenlive as usual. It was interesting, Chromium is not available in the repositories, but Google Chrome is. That's pretty cool. You have Gwibber for your blogging, as well as HexChat, LifeReader, Pigeon for your internet messaging, and you have Tiger VNC Viewer. For Office applications, again, you have Claus Mail, you have a Reader, Project Manager, and the LibreOffice Suite, pretty standard. For other, you have a link to the Korora welcome screen. When you log in for the first time, you're greeted with the Korora welcome screen. Very similar to Linux Mint and Manjaro Linux, where you have links to the README and new features, which are new features on this. Does not mention the Cinnamon nor Mate desktop, so they need to update that. But you have a link to the forums and how to get involved or help build Korora. Let's see, under sound and video, it comes with Audacity for recording, editing audio files. You have Handbrake, which is a very handy transcoder. Kdenlive, again, I installed that. It does not come with it. You have the volume control, OpenShot video editor. This interesting here, you have the Mate volume control as well as Pulse Audio. So you can run either ALSA or Pulse Audio. Rhythmbox is your music player. You have a sound converter to convert formats of your audio files. Sound Juicer to rip CDs. The VLC media player. And again, XFBurn. Under System Tools, you have all of your configurators, all your configuration settings here, as well as Gparted, a live USB creator, and the system monitor. Let's take a look here and see what we're running. So this system running at almost idle. I'm running Kdenlive in the background. It's consuming 1.7 gigabytes of memory. Now, most of that is due to Kdenlive. I did take a peek at it running just without anything else running, with no Kdenlive, no Firefox going. It was only consuming about 500 megabytes of RAM, which is pretty impressive. My CPU at that time was sitting at 4%. So with Firefox and Kdenlive running, we're drawing 50%, well, between 50 and 60% of my CPU capacity, as well as 1.7 gigs of RAM. So it's still a fairly lightweight distro, all things considered. Let's see. You have a backup client as well as a system cleaner. You have the SE Linux policy generation tool. Now, since we're here, let's take a peek at SE Linux. This is one of the things that really draws me to Fedora and Korora, is SE Linux. If you're not familiar with SE Linux, here you go. SE Linux is Security Enhanced Linux Project. Now, Linux is secure on its own. But what SE Linux does is it adds another layer of security by enforcing access controls. It basically, for one, your user account is not a sudo account. So if you want, there is a separate root password. So if your user account is compromised, your attacker is going to have very little that they can actually do with your system without having the root password. Also, SE Linux can sandbox your applications and resources. For example, one of the examples I read said that if you're running, say, Apache as a web server and that Apache was exploited and the user or the attacker was able to get root on your system, SE Linux would only allow Apache to operate within the realm of web-based applications. So they couldn't compromise your entire system. The damage would be contained. So SE Linux is a good concept. I'm glad to see it here. Also on this top bar, you have access to your system places. So you can go to your home folder, your desktop, computer, network shares, all from right here. You got your recent documents right there. You can also choose to clear your recent documents. Simple. Under your system menu, you have access to your preferences that will allow you to change the way your system operates. Nothing really spectacular there. Under administration, you have your authentication settings. The firewall is installed and set up, which, hey, I'm a big fan of that. Just another level of security. And you can get to your SE Linux management. Now, one of the areas that I think that this distribution, Korora, Fedora, where they're kind of lacking is in package management. It's not the most user-friendly package manager out there. Anytime you open it, it's going to look for your updates, which that's fine, keeping your system up to date. But this is what you get with the Yum extender. You basically have to know what you're looking for in order to see. If you even go to categories, it's not broken down that well. It only categorizes by repositories or by size. So if you're looking for an Office suite, there is no Office category for you to look into. So if you're a new user, that's going to be a bit confusing. You're going to have to know that you're looking for Calligra or OpenOffice. So that's not, in my opinion, very user-friendly. So the Yum extender is going to be more appropriate for your intermediate to advanced user. But that's really my only complaint about this system. I just wish that were a bit more user-friendly. You also have a quick launch area here on your taskbar for you to launch your most commonly used applications. On your bottom bar, you have an icon to show desktop. Your open applications will be down here. And you have your desktop manager. So you have 4 default virtual desktops. You can switch between them at will. So let's take a peek at, let's go back and take a look at that Compass implementation. Compass is eye candy. It's not needed for day-to-day operation, but if you have the ability, why not use it, right? So let's take a peek at it. We're going to launch Compass with the Mate or with the Emerald desktop manager. You get all of your eye candy, all the eye candy you could possibly want. You get, of course, the flipping of the cube. You get your wobbly windows. You get, let's open up a couple windows here. You get the Expo ability, where it's going to snap out and show you everything you have open. You can roll up your windows and roll them back down. Of course, you have the beautiful Compass cube. And all of the eye candy you could want, including the water effects. So, like I was showing earlier, we've launched it here with the Emerald window decorator. What if you wanted to switch over to GTK? Well, you just click on the GTK decorator, and there you go. It switches it back and forth without shutting down Compass. Now, Emerald and GTK have both come pre-configured if I can find it here. They both come pre-configured. Where's appearance? There it is. Under A, where it should be, right? But they both come pre-configured and preloaded with a ton of themes. And of course you can get more online, but they've done a really good job at preloading this. So there's pretty much anything you want. All told, this is about as complete an out-of-the-box experience as I've seen in Linux. Especially when you couple this with the SE Linux implementation as well as the firewall being enabled. Those two alone really impress me. So I'm thinking if you have a user that is a beginner but really doesn't mind something different as far as a desktop experience, you could even try, even if they want something that's more similar to Windows, you could even try, give them the Cinnamon desktop version, which we've covered Cinnamon implementations before. But say you have the mother-in-law, the grandmother that just goes online, surfs the web, listens to music, checks the email, and you want to give them something that is secure, out of the box, and stable. This Korora may be right up their alley. With their firewall running and SE Linux implemented, this makes for a very secure Linux experience, which in my opinion says a lot about that other operating system. You know, you can have them running out there picking up every virus they run into, or you can have them running on one of the most secure operating systems available for free. So in my opinion, Korora, Mate Desktop, it's a win all the way across. Give it a try. Let me know what you think. Well, this has been N at Zero for another episode of Run Level Zero. Thank you for joining me. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, or comment. If there's a desktop you want me to take a peek at, please leave me a comment. I'll be happy to do that. If you have any questions about Linux or how to do something, drop one of those in the comment too. Just I'd be happy to put together a how-to for you. Thank you a lot. And as always, I hope to be with you again soon with another video.